各位觀眾大家好，歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。卑詩省府喺今年嘅3月底調高寄養家庭、親屬以及家庭以外管理者嘅每月津貼，咁期望確保省內嘅弱勢年輕人以及照顧佢哋嘅人士獲得支援。咁根據加拿大兒童援助基金會嘅數字就顯示，全國錄得大約59000名嘅兒童以及青少年係需要入住寄養家庭，比起2021年嘅數字多出超過11000人。不過，省政府推出嘅呢一個更新政策就惹嚟咗部分人士以及團體嘅不滿，咁擔心無法受益。咁究竟政策係咪真係存在漏洞？當局又有冇啲乜嘢嘅措施去確保受資助人士得到公平嘅資源分配呢？
There's so many different challenges because you don't know what kind of care or support that you can get. So it was not as easy as taking on my 11-year-old grandson.
Difficulties with everything that you can possibly imagine. You know, Thomas is now almost 6 years old and he is basically like a newborn.
對於呢一班家長嘅需求，省政府當局又係咪配合到呢？
Well, it's really important to make sure that we have really safe, secure, stable homes for children and youth who come into the care system. And we know that we need to be able to support the people who are taking care of those young people.
居住喺卑詩省滿地堡嘅 Sherry Monsma 大約喺15年前成為2個孫嘅照顧護理者。佢話由於自己嘅女同埋丈夫處於嚴重矛盾，無法照顧家中兒童。雖然家庭已經作出唔少解決方案，但仍然無法解決家中嘅問題。
My kinship care journey started probably in 2007 when I took on my grandson who was 11 years old at the time. I had an informal agreement with his mother. There was some very heavy conflict in the family. He was having issues with his new stepfather, and he just no longer wanted to reside with them. He wanted to go live with his birth father, but unfortunately that wasn't a possibility that was available due to his work. So his birth father suggested that perhaps he live with his mom, which would be a grandmother that he didn't know. And he said no, he didn't want to do that. He wanted, if he was going to live with anybody else, then it would be his grandmother, which is me. So I accepted that, and he came into my care at 11 years old, which was really not too difficult. I was working full-time at that point at BCIT, and I took him on, and he was going into middle school, so we had everything we needed to sort of get him started and get him going.
Sherry 作為親屬護理者之後，佢哋嘅屋企狀況並未有安定落嚟，令佢承受更大嘅壓力。
And then I guess about 8 months after that, I got a phone call. We were sitting watching TV one night, and I got a phone call from a neighbor of my daughter's who told me that she was very concerned about the care of my 8-year-old granddaughter and my 2-year-old grandson, because she knew that there was food insecurities in the house. There was no heat in the house, and she had heard that they were 3 months arrears in their rent and were going to be evicted. So upon hearing this, I didn't really have any choice. I reached out to my granddaughter's birth dad and phoned him to clarify if he knew what was going on and what the situation was. And he told me that it was a weekend, so he had his daughter, and he had decided to not return her to that home, and he was going to pursue custody of her. So at that point, I really didn't have any other choice because of knowing that my granddaughter was safe with her dad, but my grandson, my sweet little 2-year-old grandson, was not. So I phoned the MCFD hotline and reported there was a protective care issue.
自此之後 ，Sherry 就需要負起照顧2個孫嘅責任。
So the first thing they asked me was, would I be willing to take on caring for my grandson, which is a no-brainer because any grandmother would want to do that and make sure that he was safe and well cared for. So I said yes, I would do that. And then what happened, they told me what was going to happen. What was going to happen is that they would go to the home and they would assess, and they would bring with them the police, and they would tell, if they were going to remove the child, they would tell my daughter, and my daughter would have the opportunity to call someone to take care of him or in the meantime, or forever long as it was going to be. And so I stayed at home and waited. I got the phone call from my daughter. I told her, yes, of course, I will come right away. So I went to her home, and I got my grandson. Like I say, he was 2 years old at the time, and he was fine. He knows me. We have a good relationship, so he came with me, no problem. He didn't realize there was any drama going on. So then after that, I had meetings with the MCFD, and I had different things that were coming up. I had to take time off of work so that I could make sure that I could arrange daycare.
肩負起照顧兩個孫嘅 Sherry， 日頭需要返工，夜晚放工之後又需要照顧兩個孫，令佢有時都覺得生活好艱難。
There's so many different challenges because you don't know what kind of care or support that you can get. So it was not as easy as taking on my 11-year-old grandson. It was extremely difficult because you have a 2-year-old. You need daycare. You need to make sure you have everything in your home to make him safe. I did have a lot of things there because the kids spent weekends with me quite often, so that part wasn't hard. But the other, trying to figure out all the other logistics was a challenge for sure.
一直協助一班親屬護理者嘅組織，認為喺普遍情況底下，親屬好多時候都會喺緊急環境之中需要接受呢一個艱辛嘅工作，支出亦都需要重新衡量。
I think all families are struggling in terms of how expensive things are. Foster parents and kinship caregivers are both raising children who have experienced trauma. They have, their parents aren't able to have been found to be unable to raise them. So these are children who have often witnessed or experienced abuse, or their parents just aren't able to raise them. And so that trauma of leaving their parents, plus often having some unique special needs from some periods of neglect, or because their parents were using substances as when they were pregnant, or those kinds of things. Those children often have really unique needs. So that is also really expensive, being able to support children that may need extra counseling, may need medications, may need special glasses and physical supports. And not every child that's in foster care or kinship care, has those sorts of needs, but it's a large percentage. I think we found that 76% of the children that are being raised by their grandparents, aunties, and uncles because their parents aren't able, 76% of those have experienced some form of trauma.
隨住近年通貨膨脹不斷加劇，一般家庭支出亦都較以往龐大。卑斯兒童及家庭發展廳喺今年3月底宣布調高寄養家庭、親屬以及家庭以外管理者嘅每個月津貼。但係喺今次嘅更新政策入邊，受資助嘅項目就唔包括 Sherry 所屬嘅類別家屬照顧兒童項目 Child in the Home of a Relative。呢一個係由於早喺2010年3月底，呢一個項目已經停止接受新嘅申請。不過喺大約1個月之前 ，Sherry 喺兒童及家庭發展廳嘅官員口中得知，根據佢呢一個嘅情況，其實能夠轉到現時其他仍然運作受資助嘅項目入邊。Sherry 透露，經過一系列嘅背景審查以及無犯罪記錄審查，現時已經成功轉到受資助項目，每個月津貼亦都有所增加。
We started Fairness for Children Raised by Relatives in August of 2021. We're a non-profit society, registered society, and all of our members are kinship caregivers and 100% volunteers, and we have come together to ensure that our children we're advocating for our children to get the same rights, opportunities, and benefits as all other children across the province of BC. As you know, foster care children have way higher rights and are not rights, but standardized benefits and a whole platform of different services that are provided by MCFD. And I guess what we would like to see is some of those strong services, especially for our youth aging out of care and our children with special needs to be brought up to the same level as that. We are meeting with government officials. It has taken a little bit to get a hold of them and to find ways to do that. We've done MLA campaigns for the last almost 2 years and got some of the support from there.
BC 兒童及家庭發展廳長 Mr. Dean 迪恩話：省政府今次嘅撥款係由於2023財政預算案承諾向兒童及家庭發展廳提供8490萬，預計大約有7800名兒童、青少年以及護理者受惠。
Well, it's really important to make sure that we have really safe, secure, stable homes for children and youth who come into the care system. And we know that we need to be able to support the people who are taking care of those young people. And so we have over 4,700 people who provide homes in the province for children and youth who come into care, and we need to support them. It's not just foster carers, it's extended family as well, kinship care. It might be an auntie or a grandma, and we need to support all of those people in being able to take care of children and youth and to be able to provide them for what they need. So you can imagine being able to provide money to them for the children and youth to go to activities. They need food, they need clothing, they need support for their education. And so we actually had a look at how much does that actually cost in reality, and we made the decision to increase the rates because they have been frozen for so long, to make sure that we can provide the supports for all of those children and youth who are in those homes.
今次更新嘅政策資助金額增長4.7%，究竟省府係點樣衡量增長幅度呢？
What we did was we had a look at what do children and youth need. So we looked at like younger kids, and then we looked at older kids as well. What do they actually need? They need they need food, they need clothing, they need to be able to do activities, they need to be supported in their education. And then we had a look and said, well, how much does that cost? And so we actually pulled together then a total for the two different age groups, and said, well, that's what we need to provide, because, you know, children and youth who are in care, whether it's with an extended family member, like an auntie or a grandma, or whether it's in foster care, we need to be providing the same as their peers have. And so that was how we determined what the increase should be, because the rate had been frozen under the BC Liberal government for 10 years. And so the rate had actually really got left far behind. We had a lot of catching up to do.
對於有部分人士對 BC 兒童及家庭發展廳嘅撥款條件存在疑慮，當局就話會因應佢哋所需而作出適當嘅支援。但係撥款計劃所涵蓋嘅層面係咪全面呢？我哋下一節翻嚟再睇。歡迎翻嚟節目時間。BC 省府今次宣布嘅擴大支援計劃，只係針對寄養家庭。但係對於一啲需要照顧有特殊需要嘅小朋友嘅親生父母家庭啦，就並冇對等嘅資助。有團體以及一啲受影響家庭就期望政府會對佢哋一視同仁。而當局又有啲乜嘢嘅解決方案呢？
居住喺陽光海岸 Sunshine Coast 嘅 Clara Kramer 同丈夫育有一名6歲嘅仔，但可惜佢個仔需要特殊照顧 ，Clara 不得不放棄自己嘅工作照顧 Thomas。
Difficulties with everything that you can possibly imagine. You know, Thomas is now almost 6 years old, and he is basically like a newborn who wakes up several times a night as well, of course. So, you know, it's like having a newborn for 6 years, doing the same thing over and over, only he's getting heavier and growing bigger and bigger and, you know, dealing with his medical issues. But, you know, it's what it is. You do what you have to do. It's that simple. It's really, you know, giving up is not an option. And we tragically lost our 8-year-old daughter 1 year before Thomas was born. And, you know, we are living, you know, very complicated and burdened life, but we still try to find, you know, positive things when we can. dark humor helps a lot.
Clara 對於今次卑斯兒童及家庭發展廳宣布嘅撥款政策，並冇為一啲親生父母育有特別需要兒童作出任何支援，表示失望。佢又認為省政府當局冇為佢哋着想，就連一啲嘅醫療開支都要用自己嘅積蓄。
It's a Groundhog Day. We call it Groundhog Day because, every day is pretty much the same because, we cannot travel because we cannot have a medical insurance for him. Nobody would insure him because he's too risky to travel with, and he doesn't travel that well either. And, we live in a vicinity of a hospital. That's what we do. And, we do what we do. But, he's a mostly happy little boy who loves going to school. He loves hanging out with his friends at school. And, that has been a very positive change in his fairly limited life because, during pandemic and even after pandemic, we were living in a very tight bubble, the entire family. So now he at least gets to hang around kids because he never was in a daycare, because we never could get into a daycare because there was no funding to hire the one-on-one support teacher that he must have at all times with him. So there was no money for that. Government didn't give, we were on a waiting list. I did call out Minister for Children and Family Development, and Mitzi sent me a lovely email saying one day I might come and visit, but that's pretty much the answer that I got. No commitment, no, a lot of very nice words of we hear you and we know of your struggles, but no concrete solutions for us. Even the acknowledgement that we are unpaid caregivers, full-time unpaid caregivers.
喺今次嘅撥款入邊，點解冇包括一啲育有特別需要兒童嘅親生家庭？迪恩就解釋，佢哋能夠喺其他渠道獲得省府資助。
For non-foster families, the BC family benefit is going up by 10% in July, and there's a new top-up on that of an extra $500 for single parents. So foster families wouldn't access that, but biological families with kids with complex needs would access that. And the climate action tax credit is also increasing. So a family of 4, for example, will actually receive $900 a year instead of $500 a year. So we're doing both. We've done a large increase for foster carers and kinship carers, that the extended family carers, especially because that had been frozen for such a long time under the previous government. And for biological families with kids with complex needs, we have some cost of living measures that will benefit them. We're also investing in services to support them, investing in respite, investing in extra therapeutic services available. Last year, I'll give you an example. We put an extra $10 million in the base budget for what's called the at-home program. What that program does is it provides funding to families to purchase equipment for children and youth who have complex needs, just to be able to, get through their daily routine.
一直關注特殊兒童情況嘅卑斯特殊兒童學會創辦人 Brenda Lellenham 本身屋企嘅仔都有特殊需要，佢就喺幾年前喺社交平台設立一個群組，希望藉此幫助其他同自己情況一樣嘅家長。佢話作為特殊兒童嘅母親，需要大量嘅額外付出去照顧個仔，其他人難以體會到佢哋嘅感受。
I mean, families in general are facing incredible financial burdens, but one of the biggest challenges for our families is that as soon as you have a child that has such high support needs, you find yourself becoming like a 24/7 caregiver. It's not the same as parenting. It's not, there's no casual play dates with the neighbor or sleepovers at a friend's house or easy after school care or sharing childcare arrangements when they're little. Our kids require specialized care, and they require 24/7 care and support for all of their daily living needs. So one of the biggest challenges for families is the fact that they're not able to work. One parent, if it's a two-parent family, one parent most often cannot work or can only work very part-time or find sort of something that they can do a little bit for a few hours a day from home. It's incredibly challenging to get childcare. It's incredibly challenging to get before and after school support when the kids get older. It's there's a lack of care support on holidays, weekends, summer.
Brenda 話喺長期高壓嘅情況底下，父母嘅精神同埋情緒都會受到影響。
There's actually a lot of research around the emotional stress, the physical stress on families, especially with kids with high support needs, with medical complexity. There is a lot of research there. It is an incredibly challenging life. I mean, a lot of kids have palliative diagnosis or life-limiting diagnosis. Some of them have very challenging medical needs to keep up with, like, essentially families have mini ICUs in their homes with all sorts of medical equipment, and they are tasked with keeping up with that every day. And it's incredibly stressful and challenging, on top of being financially challenging.
至於點樣支援一班家長同埋特殊需要嘅兒童，卑斯寄養家庭協會副主席 Janet Dyer 認為，現時省內缺乏社工，政府需要喺呢一方面增加人手，至少能夠減輕家長嘅負擔。
I actually have spoken directly to the ministry on this subject. I really believe that we need to find a new recruiting program to introduce more people to join the social work industry. We are short of social workers all over the province. We desperately need social workers. And the social workers we have and the new ones coming up, we need more education for them so that not only will they have less of a caseload so they can put more attention on each individual file that they have, but also that they be educated on how, now that it's policy in Victoria, how to work with foster parents to remember that we're a team. No one is higher regarded than any other member of the team. That includes the foster families and the ministry workers. They are the final deciding factor by virtue of being the guardian. However, we're the frontline workers who live 24/7 with our kids, 365. And we know our kids best, and they need to learn to listen to us when we are advocating for things that our children need.
Clara 話：若果得到當局資助，將會為佢同埋佢嘅家庭帶嚟巨大嘅轉變。
It would be life-changing. For majority of families, it will be life-changing because unless you are a family that has income of most likely $250,000 from one person, because the other one is taking full care. So unless, you make $250,000 a year, you can't really pay for the therapies that your child would benefit from, but can't have because, there is no funding. So just having the funding available is a huge change, but all, our group of caregiving parents really want is acknowledgement that we are actually doing a job. We are doing the most important job, and we are keeping our children alive while our government is actively sabotaging our efforts. When it comes to, medical care or just access to therapies or anything, our families have to battle for everything for our children.
好啦，今集嘅節目時間呢又差唔多啦。咁如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有啲乜嘢意見嘅話，係好歡迎大家以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡㗎。我哋嘅電郵地址係 nag26@fairchildtv.com。咁如果觀眾想上網重溫翻今集嘅節目，亦都可以上到去我哋嘅網站3w.fairchildtv.com， 點擊節目重溫一欄就係睇得翻㗎啦。下星期同樣時間再同大家見面，晚安。